Well, I think we can begin. Good afternoon, everybody. It's just 1 minute into the afternoon here on Wednesday, the 8th of July. Welcome along. Delighted to be hosting Queensland Walks for this event hosted by the Queensland Heat Health Community of Practice. I'm Dr. Tony Matthews, co-lead of the QCOP and also today's facilitator and host, not presenter, but host. And so it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all. Thanks for making the time. We were just discussing beforehand whether people participating might be affected by the Telstra outage, but hopefully not too many were or are. So we're glad to see a crowd here, and we're recording it, of course, for everybody else who'd like to tune in later or indeed watch it back.
Yeah.
So we might move along, Angela, if you don't mind. And before we depart any further, a brief acknowledgement of country. Griffith University, representing many of us, but not all of us, but those who are facilitating this meeting, acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands, and I'm sure there are many on which we're meeting this afternoon, and pay our respects to the elders past, present and future. And we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Thanks, Angela. Just a brief agenda of what we have coming up this morning. We have a brief introduction from myself, followed by Anna from Queensland Walks, who will take over and give a roughly 45-minute presentation. That will allow us then to have some time for group discussion and closing remarks. I might just say at this point, please feel free to populate your questions into the meeting chat as we go. You don't have to wait till the end to put your hand up. If you have a question, please put it in the chat along the way, especially if you're tight on time and you need to go around that 1 o'clock mark, because we'll try and get to the ones in the chat first to keep things moving along. So please do put your questions in as you have them, and obviously hopefully we'll have some time for group discussion as well, because not every question will come up in advance, of course. So we'll aim to be finished, of course, by 1:30 also. Okay, thanks, Angela. Just a few technical and housekeeping matters. You'll all be familiar with these, I'm sure, from many other meetings like this, but please keep your microphones and cameras off until discussion time. You can use the chat to ask questions during Anna's presentation, and then if you want to raise your hand and come on the microphone after that, that's fine. If it's a complex question, you may prefer to do that. And also, as I've already mentioned, this event will be recorded and shared with the slide deck, so just making that known to everybody before we go any further. If you don't want to be recorded as part of this, then please feel free to exit the meeting and you can always watch the recording. Thanks, Angela. And we'll go one more. Look, many of you will be very familiar with me and Shannon, and this isn't really about us today, but just to say that we are the co-leads and facilitators of the Queensland Heat Health Community of Practice, which has now been going for nearly 4 years, and we're just thrilled to see it growing all the time, and thrilled to keep looking after it and bringing these events to you and building the network and sharing everything. For those that don't know me, I'm basically an urban and environmental planner. That's most of what I do, particularly looking at environmental impacts in cities and especially heat over these last few years. Shannon also has a background in environmental science rather than environmental planning, but now works more in public health, and much of her work is over there looking at the impacts of heat on various vulnerable communities. And we have done a great deal of work together and have a lot of ongoing work together as well as work with various members of this group. So a very quick introduction from ourselves, particularly for anyone new along this afternoon. And presenting today, her fantastic work with Queensland Walks is Anna Campbell. Anna is just a fantastic driving force for walking as a right and as something that should be inclusive and accessible and available to everybody. And of course, walking is of considerable concern with regards to heat and heat management. It's very difficult to walk in Queensland, especially if you're not well shaded, if there's not good infrastructure and provision. So much of Anna's work is focused on that. She's had a long career with local government. She works in advocacy and planning, physical health programs, lots of different things. And she was recently honoured as well by the Planning Institute of Australia, which I'm assuming she's too modest to mention here, but I was there, so I'm going to mention it. So delighted to have Anna with us today and to hand over to her to present for the next while. And as I say, if you do have questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll see you again at the end of Anna's presentation. Thanks, everybody.
What a very kind introduction. Thank you so much, Tony. And welcome, everyone. I'll just see if I think I've got control. Can we see the Queensland Walk slide? Thumbs up if that's good. Excellent, great. So Afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here today to talk about the work of Queensland Walks and what we're doing with cooler paths and places. I'm joining from Meanjin and would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and our emerging leaders. I'd also like to acknowledge any board members that might be on today and thank Griffith University for having me on, and my colleague Tia Hammett, who helped me prepare this presentation. Thank you, Tia. So I'd like to start with a bit of food for thought. This image was taken down the road from me. This is my everyday bus stop, and this is my mate Joe, who's waiting for a bus at his local bus stop at Stafford Heights. You can see that he's sitting behind the bus shelter and he's seeking refuge. And what you can't see in that image is that the grass behind, it's on a 45-degree angle, so it's only suitable for Joe that's pretty fit. It's not suitable for anyone with a pram or a wheelchair or an older person. So the only place that they can stand is right down there, down near the roundabout, which is possibly sort of 20 metres away. As you can see, the footpath is hot. It doesn't have any shading. So, you know, this is a really great example of what we're trying to capture in the walking environment. This type of design with a western-facing bus shelter, this is fairly common. It's what we like to call hot, hostile, and horrendous, just like the footpath. Here at Queensland Walks, we're really interested in the lived experience of community members like Joe, like myself, and like everyone online today, and the comfort and safety of where we walk and where we wait and rest. Whilst we can use data to map where the shelters are, we rarely ask the user experience. We rarely ask Joe, what's it like sitting at your bus stop? Do you like it? Do you choose not to catch the bus because it's too hot, hostile, and horrendous? So for today, I have a little bit of homework for you, and I'd love to hear from you all at the end of my presentation today and how you can help inform our work and contribute to it. Is there in some way that you can assist in our work as research or as a citizen scientist? By the end of the presentation, I'd love you to have a path or a transit stop, so bus, train, tram, ferry, or platform or station that comes to mind that is hot, hostile, and horrendous in parts of the day or all parts of the day, or it might not have any shelter at all. Or can you inform us with a fabulous transit stop that you can profile and share so that we can use it as a great example? So just before I get started, a little bit about us. Queensland Walks, we're a tiny little not-for-profit organisation. We're currently running off 1.8 FTE, but I'm sure many of you know our work and we punch above our weight. So we're advocating for all Queenslanders who choose to walk, run, roll and stroll. We're established in 2012 by concerned primarily transport professionals who could see that walking was being left behind in transport design. Whilst it's come further a little bit more, we still see the similar challenges in the transport design. So we're the peak body for walking and providing a strong voice at local council and state government levels, and a little bit of federal as well, and we can talk more about that later. We represent everyone who walks, runs, rolls and strolls. So Queensland Walks is governed by a board of community members donating their time and volunteering their time to provide strategic direction and advice to support Queensland Walks to achieve our goals. And we have many goals. Our board members reflect a diverse range of professional experience and strong commitment to achieving the Queensland Walks purpose. We aim to be evidence-based and work with many of our academic partners online today to develop and connect research to present to our decision makers and to the community and connect the two between. Our mission is to advocate on behalf of all those Queenslanders and so that they can walk in safe, inclusive and accessible way for their transport, health and recreational needs. We tend to focus a little bit more on the transport aspect. So in the process of preparing this, I realised that we've moved on since when we first formed in 2012. We were lucky enough to do some co-advocacy with the Heart Foundation so that the state government would commit to a walking strategy. Through that walking strategy and action plan, we were thrilled to get some funding in 2020 to do 3 core actions. So that was advocacy, attending, connecting with local governments, being on every road safety roundtable, transport and main roads committee you can think of, and making sure that we connect with councils and local government as well. The second part was to develop a Queensland Walking Alliance, which we successfully did, and we'll talk about some of those action items. The Queensland Walking Alliance brought 30 organisations together, and we prioritised what we needed to focus on. And I'm glad to say that heat and shade was one of those top 3s that we focused on. The third part was we were funded to develop some Q workshops, a Queensland Walkshop, which is a walking workshop, taking decision makers, community members out for a walk and identifying where we need to improve walkability. And we developed some advocacy, grassroots advocacy called We Walk as well. Now, unfortunately, last year we lost our transport funding, and that was our core funding. So it's left us in a little bit of a tricky position. We're really lucky to have developed those workshops. So we've had to hate the word, and it's post-COVID, but we had to pivot. And it meant that we needed to bring forward our workshops and start charging for them. We're really grateful to those organisations and councils that have seen the value in our work, and we've been doing some fabulous work in places like Hervey Bay, Rockhampton, Cairns, Logan. But we need to engage with many more councils to do this work. We also embed education. Some of our new work partnering with Zonta Club of Brisbane, Queensland Health and University of Queensland is our Safe Cities, Safe Streets for women and girls work. And we're focusing on public transport, on connectivity with walking, the first and last mile, and 2032. The last part is developing our volunteering skills so that we can support volunteers on the ground in all our regional areas, and for them to conduct citizen science so that we can get some benefit and advocate on their behalf. Now, advocacy is a tricky word at the moment, so we really talk about our community activation and engagement. So you'll be thrilled to see these advocacy pillars, and these haven't changed at all. So we effectively have 5 advocacy pillars that you can see on your screen. So they are safe, cool, inclusive, healthy, active and livable, recreation and event spaces. And I'll just give you a bit of an insight into what these advocacy pillars are. So safe is talking about road safety, roads and roadsides. It's also connected footpaths and separated paths, daytime and nighttime places, safe for everyone. And nighttime spaces have become even more important as our communities, as our suburbs are getting hotter. People are seeking times of the day where they can be more active, which is before and after work. We're evidence-based and best practice, and we're focusing on kids walk and event and legacy places for safe. For cool, we're focusing on 3 main things: shaded places for walking, shaded places for waiting and resting, and all-weather protected places for walking. Inclusive, and you can look at these in detail, inclusive, healthy, active and recreational event places. They feed into heat response, but I'll let you have a look on the website so you can view that in more detail, so we can focus on more detail around our cool and covered spaces. So I know that we'll be preaching to the converted here about why walk, but I just wanted to provide a bit of context. And why we advocate for walking. And I'm keen to highlight on the left-hand side, this is for those non-transport planners, this is the sustainable transport hierarchy. And you'll note that the human factor is put right on top of the list, whereas the automobiles, the using a vehicle is right at the bottom of the list. And what we're saying, every time we go into a meeting or a discussion, we're using this sustainable transport hierarchy is let's design it for people. Let's make sure that people can move around safely and comfortably. And of course, that includes shade and heat mitigation. We know that a walkable place is also a livable place. So when safety is implemented, walking promotes positive health and well-being outcomes, as well as being the most sustainable transport form. Walkability also helps to reduce heat in our transport system through carbon reduction, increased shade, and reduced roadways. That is the black spaces. Reduced roads means it's going to be a cooler climate. So we've got a lot to do in this space, particularly when we're entering into an era of big stadiums, Bruce Highway upgrades. We have a lot of challenges. So we advocate for the sustainable transport hierarchy across planning, design, maintenance, and budgetary decision-making processes for roads and roadsides, prioritising people over cars. What a zany concept. So I just give you a little bit of an overview of our projects, and we'll lead to the cool and covered. So Queensland Walks is a community-based membership organisation. You can become a member. It's really inexpensive and you can donate, but effectively we're a volunteer group set up to improve the conditions for walking. Our projects revolve around advocacy, education campaigns, and working with local community groups. And this is where it's really important, connecting the research with our community. We believe in empowering our local communities and fostering grassroots action. Our projects aim to translate good research, particularly coming out of Queensland, and connect the human element with decision makers and asset owners. And quite often we find in the process of our workshops and events that decision makers hear the stories from the community and make changes immediately. That might be tree planting, it might be structural shading, it might be some maintenance work. So this is a little bit of an overview on our Q workshops. The Queensland workshops, it's a walking workshop, as I said before. It's part stroll, part strategy session. And so we go for a walk. We've designed and we've started using GIS mapping and using Survey 123 through Esri. And we collect a series of answers from questions around walkability. Some of that might include footpath widths and verge plantings and the heat. It might talk about nighttime activity and whether people feel safe in these spaces, where they feel comfortable waiting and resting in this space. So through that, we're starting to collect some really fabulous data that we can report back to our asset owners and make recommendations of how we can improve it. We have seen change through these workshops. We've seen some change in Kingaroy. Council has reduced some speed. They've allocated funding for future pathways. In Rockhampton, they've been able to assign some budget to street lights for nighttime walking, which is good, that we can encourage more people to walk and run at nighttime. And Logan, they're working on some findings and in response to our workshop. So we're seeing some real outcomes here. So we conduct daytime and nighttime workshops. We also do road safety and kids workshops right across Queensland. Now that we're not funded through Transport and Main Roads, we need to pay to play. So we've moved to that fee structure model where councils approach us or asset owners approach us and we can deliver that. We can do reduced rates for our partners, not-for-profits, etc. So why do Queensland workshops matter? They're best practice, people first way to identify what is a barrier, what helps and hinders people walking. They bring together local business owners, planners and decision makers, and they share local insights. The lived experience from those people with a focus on the collaborative problem solving. After the walk, we'll do a post-walk conversation, and we sit down in a community hall and have a group discussion. And it's incredible some of the conversations that come out of those discussions. Even better when we have a decision maker or a leader in the room to hear what the community wants. It's a game changer for everyone. So it helps inform decision-making and local improvements to support more walkable and livable places. And who doesn't want that? So that one of our other projects is the Queensland Walking Alliance. So it's a coalition of partner organisations. We brought together 30 organisations and individuals representing over 2 million Queenslanders. through this work, we developed 3 different call to action documents. And this was when we surveyed the Queensland Walking Alliance, we asked, what are your priorities through this alliance? What would you like to see? And the top 3 issues that came up were accessibility, road safety, and heat and shade. So that 3rd document is the one that we just released. It was a soft release. It was during our bumpy period of being defunded. So it's a slow burner, and we hope that this community of practice might help us really daylight the work that we're doing and extend the life of the Queensland Walking Alliance. So the 3rd one, cool paths and places for walking and waiting. I wanted to give you a little bit of a background on what we're doing with our citizen science work. So in the early days of the Queensland Walking Alliance, we actually developed this little Walk My Street checklist. So we did a consultation on through the Walking Alliance, and we were using the fabulous Heart Foundation Walkability Checklist that at that stage wasn't online. It was a PDF format, and it was a little bit lengthy for what we were trying to achieve. So we co-designed this Walk My Street checklist. We've made a few changes since then. Originally, we had it sitting on our website and it pumped out in a WordPress form. And I was super excited that it started bringing through some data and some really interesting insights. And we found that one of our questions, do you have a shaded path that you feel comfortable, was starting to come through as the most critical thing for Queenslanders when they walk. So depending on, and the data is always live, so depending on when we look at it, it was bumping around 70 to 85% of Queenslanders saying that they know they don't have a cool and covered path to walk. So since then, we've developed this further, and we've been really lucky to be working with an international partner called GIS Core, who's a pro bono organisation using international GIS specialists. And they have donated their time pro bono. They've been developing a dashboard, and they've been able to help us with the Walk My Street checklist and our Safe Cities for Women and Girls with the data that we're collecting from within our Esri platform. And we'll soon be able to, in real time, show the data that's coming through from Queenslanders, what they're telling us. You'll see that I've said dashboard in development because our colleagues in the state would be shocked that I'm showing you this. It's still in development, but you can see that we're starting to map all the places that this is occurring across Queensland, and the data that's how walkable it is and particular questions. You can find Walk My Street check on our website, and I highly recommend you go and do it, or you can join a Safe Cities walk with us one day. So as I said, Queenslanders are telling us, and if you can see that over 70% of Queenslanders lately, and with this is with the live data, have expressed that their footpath was not shaded or cool in summer and did not protect them from sun exposure and heat. This is really alarming, and if I was an elected representative, this is the one thing I'd be working on. It's an easy win to be able to be designing shade and structural canopy coverage, shade, canopy coverage and structural shading in. But it seems to be the last thought of, and particularly in that transport sector, that it's the icing on the cake, it's not the main meal, and we really need to change this. You'll also note that the average shade and heat protection rating was 2.8 out of 5 from our Walk My Street checklist. So we have a long way to go. We think, and Shannon and I had a brief conversation about it earlier, we think 2032 might be that gift of that legacy piece of Queenslanders demanding that we need to cool our footpaths and the places where we wait and walk. But we need a collective effort to be able to do this work. So we all know, preaching to the converted here, that Queensland is at a turning point. Rates of extreme heat are increasing, causing more people to suffer from heat-related illness. You'll note that our fabulous partners at Sweltering Cities We love their co-advocacy, and we often bounce off ideas and borrow some ideas and apply them to Queensland. But we love their summer survey that they conducted, and they included walking in there. And we should all be alarmed that 80% of Queenslanders avoid walking and 42% avoid catching public transport. Now, we all need walking in our lives, and we need many more people to get on public transport. And with 50-cent fares now in Queensland, it's even more important to be designing it around people waiting for their transit to arrive. So cool, comfortable, connected, convenient and safe spaces are critical for walking, for increased population growth, for transit use and 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games. So we all know that shade is an essential public infrastructure, but we know in this room, but I'm not sure that our decision makers see it as a priority. And I giggle because on our screen we have the beautiful Victoria Bridge, and this is it might have been bumped off the highest pedestrian link because the new beautiful Kangaroo Point Bridge might have a higher rate of walking, but it links between two major hubs, the Brisbane CBD and the Cultural Centre. And what you'll probably see is that there's no shading whatsoever, and anyone that's walked along there will know how hot, hostile and horrendous it is. Now, we had a little project in Brisbane called the Metro Bus. It's a bus rapid transit, and shading was actually included in this for the Victoria Bridge to be shaded. However, priorities were realigned. There was some value management done, and shading was pulled out as one of the first things to remove. So we have an incredible challenge here about prioritising shade and prioritising walking in the public transport element and the public realm. We understand that this has been budgeted back in, but it's 2028. I believe it will be delivered, and it couldn't be a minute too soon. I'm sure, put your hand up if you've walked across this bridge, or put a heart and tell me if you know how awful it is to walk along here. So we can, there's a few hearts. Yes, people have been across there, and you might have seen an article or two with me holding an umbrella and a fan trying to demonstrate how hot and hostile it is. So we can provide safe places for walking in Queensland, which all Queenslanders will benefit, and not only Queenslanders across Australia as well. We know some of this conversation will be natural in places in tropical areas, and recently visiting Cairns, we could see that the emphasis by the mayor on a tree canopy was valued much higher than we're seeing in southeast Queensland. So we have quite a lot of work to do here. There's particularly critical in the wake of a lack of local government funding and capacity and resources. And we know that local councils are struggling to be able to fund active transport. And we'll see that change within, shading and heat mitigation measures as well. So there is an expectation, unfortunately, that developers will do the heavy lifting when it comes to providing green space and amenity. But without this clear articulation of community need and a lack of policy to direct them, this is not working. And we're really worried that we're going to see a patchwork effect of development that design shade in, and the next block, there's nothing. And I worry for those of you in Brisbane, I worry about what the link will look like from Barambin, from Victoria Park Stadium that's being built along Brunswick Street through to the Valley Centre, where we want people to spend time and stay around and linger. But if you walk along there, it's not only unsafe from a walkability perspective, but it's also hot, hostile and horrendous. So jumping to the cooler paths and places. So the Queensland Walking Alliance spent quite a little bit of time developing this call to action document, and we landed on three main call to actions. So with our documents, every meeting that we go to with a minister, with a state MP, with a councillor, we go along with our little documents. And during summer, the Cooler Paths and Places document will accompany us, and we will be talking about it all the time. We'll use it in our social media. We'll use it in any of our policy direction. And we hope that you might be able to access this document as well. At the moment, it's online on our website, and we can pop a link to that after the event, or someone can pop it in the chat. But we called for three main things, and we linked in the concept of movement and place frameworks. So we called for one, cooler paths for walking. That seems simple enough. That's from the movement framework. The second part that we called was for covered spaces and places for waiting and resting. Now, this could be, thank you, Shannon, this could be in locations where it could be around schools, it can be around transit, it can be around our brand new stadiums. It's anywhere where there's a need to wait and to rest. And we know that those the structural shading incrementally along paths is going to be really important, as is pocket parks and verges and some unique structures to allow for people to wait and rest. So we're calling for to transform waiting and gathering spaces with covered spaces for the community. So our action here is we call on a whole of government approach to cover the places and spaces where we wait, meet and participate. To do this, we want to be able to increase protection from the sun, heat and weather. We want shading and cooling in every single project. And it doesn't matter if it's urban planning, transport planning, if it's communities based, it needs to be in considerations in every single project. We're also calling for connected shading and precincts. So education, sporting, employment, transport, entertainment precincts. We're also asking for upgrade design for shelters and shade. And this links to a campaign that we're running we'd love to get you involved in. Design for bus shelters. Have we designed it correctly? And our parks and playgrounds. And also to provide awnings on buildings, design them back in. Just jumping back to cooler paths for walking, which is the number one, we've asked for a whole of government approach to cool our streets and paths where we walk. So increased tree canopy and vegetation, shading on paths and crossings. So that can be bridge crossings, but we also need to start considering road crossings as well. In some locations, we're waiting well over 90 seconds to cross. So how can we design shading in these locations? We're calling for green grids, urban forests and all-weather paths. Like our cousins in Singapore, we need to start bringing Singapore into our southeast Queensland and across Queensland as well. We're also calling for funding for councils to establish shade, developer contributions to go to green space and planting, and better road design for safer streets. Now, I know that could sound pretty weird, but if we reduce roadway allocation and road-based infrastructure to allow for canopy cover and verge planting, it's going to cool it down. And there's a great example at the Sunshine Coast where they've removed a slip lane, which is great for road safety, but they've changed it with concrete and a concrete island when it could have been an incredible green space. Reducing the wait times at the road and roadside for people walking and sun exposure. So, for example, signalised pedestrian lights, pedestrian refuge crossings and more, and create safer streets and narrow roadways which can accommodate green infrastructure for walking. So the third call to action is possibly even more where our researchers come in. We're asking for a joined up approach to increase shade and reduce heat through policy. And you'll note that we add in there that we're calling for research, community programs and funded citizen science. And this is where we can link in. We also call for expanded environmental impact, a definition to include canopy cover and heat impact. We want trees to be considered a physical asset. We're calling for a design coordination unit and expand local government infrastructure grants for funding what we need. I'll move on and I can answer any questions on this later. So what do we need for a cool and covered Queensland? Here are some actionable ideas for a cool Queensland. So we'd really love to see a state government landscape architect, and this has been supported by the work of the Design Alliance, which I'll talk about a little bit. That stakeholder collaboration. We're calling for bridges and paths with shading and priority green walkable spines or green grids. We're calling for meeting locations with shading, seating, water and bathrooms, and urban tree canopy targets for footpaths and places for waiting. And we need this across the states in our urban areas, not just SEQ. We need structural shading solutions that need to be unique and individual to place. They need to be place-based and they can be temporary or fixed. I think the Olympics provides this beautiful opportunity of doing some wonderful place-based design and making unique shelters that will be comfortable and interesting for that area as well. We'd love to see water play parks. We'd love to see smaller pocket parks, verge planting and shared gardens. And we really need to have that review of bus and train shelters, timetabling and routes to centres. This will be really important. Obviously, having a bus or a train that has 30-minute wait between it means that people are waiting longer in these unshaded spaces. So by improving the timetable and the routes to centres, we can reduce heat impact. And we also need to treat our city as a tropical or subtropical and design accordingly. So I really want to do a shout out to all our stakeholders that we collaborate with. And here's just some examples. And it's always nervous doing a call out because then we're going to forget all our other partners through the Queensland Walking Alliance. But I wanted to acknowledge the Design Alliance, which is the Design Alliance is AIA Architects, AILA, Landscape Architects, Design Institute, and PR Planning Institute of Australia, and they've done some phenomenal work in their advocacy around green pathways, gold places. You'll note that in our advocacy, our call to action, that we mirror some of the asks, and that's been really important that we're singing from the same song sheet. We're also really happy to be involved in the Sweltering Cities campaign, Is Brisbane a Heat Safe City? Which a lot of these conversations and connections with Shannon and Griffith has commenced, particularly for Queensland Walk. So we're very grateful for their walk and for the work and the leadership, and also acknowledging down there the Green Grid, which was worked through LAT Studios and the state government architect, former architect Malcolm Middleton, who's one of our board members. They've done significant work around the Green Grid, a policy that has more recently been daylighted through the work of LAT Studios. And we're super excited that it was nominated and voted the most favourite Making Our Mark Brisbane City Council campaign. So all of us collectively need to make sure that we get the Green Grid, that it continues, and we can apply the Green Grid across multiple cities and communities, city centres, towns, etc. So also happening in this area is Sweltering Cities Busted Bus Stops. And they ran a fabulous campaign where they got the community and they mapped out all the locations where it was really bad infrastructure or no infrastructure at all. You can see in that image that it's just a sign. So a shout out to Emma and her crew that have done this work. And we borrowed this concept to apply to a campaign that we've been working on. At the same time, ABC, we've been bouncing around with ABC and back and forth with their program, and Kat Feeney and her producer, who's passionate about public transport, they started the Best and Worst Bus Stops campaign. It's been one of their most popular radio slots where the community has voted for their favourite bus shelter. So they've done the old positive sandwich, best, and they're now on to the worst. And so it's been really fabulous listening to the community of what they're nominating. At the same time, we just released one of our campaigns. And so we backed off it a little bit to see how the ABC would run it and how we could mirror it and leverage off their work as well. Obviously, ABC has an incredible platform and reach to the community. So we need to make sure that we can complement that work and engage with those stakeholders as we go along. So through this work and through the concept of our cool paths and places for walking, we needed to have a natty little campaign that would get Queenslanders talking, and so that we could find an angle to be able to talk about often a boring call to action. So rather than talking about a paper, we wanted to talk about the citizen science work. So Baked Before Boarding is a campaign that Queensland Walks created to leverage off this work. You'll see my mate, Joe, that I talked about earlier at my little Stafford Heights bus stop. And we are using this concept, using the Esri platform, using Survey 123 to ask the community and to shine a light on good parts and bad parts of where we're waiting for public transport. Now, borrowing Sweltering Cities concept, we wanted to make sure that we could apply it to most Queenslanders. And so we've actually packaged it up as transit, public transport, rather than just buses. We know that sometimes Queenslanders can be really agnostic about what public transport they're catching. And so if we can design it for bus stops, bus stations, train stops, train platforms, ferry and tram, then that will be inclusive. We also know that quite a few Queenslanders with disability will choose to use ferry or train and will be co-located near public transport that is accessible and easy to catch. So we need to make sure that we're capturing that information. So we're asking a few questions, and this is where we'd love for you to get involved. The Baked Before Boarding campaign is completely grassroots, unfunded, and this is the version 1 design. And this is our call to action to the community of practice group: is how can we design this? How can we get this out to the community, and how can you be involved in it and help inform our work and to be able to map it? So it's a bit of a call to you. About the campaign, the message is simple. If you want people to choose public transport, we have to make the places where we wait safe, comfortable in a Queensland climate, and dignified. And you'll see on that picture, there's my friend Christy at Zillmere, and it's outside the Zillmere Community Hall. There's not even a bus shelter, and you can see that there isn't a tree to be seen. If there is a tree, it's not over the footpath. So there's so much work to be done. We want Queenslanders to tell us these places. We can map on Esri exactly where the bus shelters are or the bus stops are, but we can't get that information from our community where they actually need it. So it's user-centred. So Baked Before Boarding contributes to the Queensland Walking Alliance call to action for cooler paths and places. And you'll see a few notes there. We just want to make sure that we're linking in the desire of the Queensland Walking Alliance and bringing forward some of their specific actions of increasing tree canopy around public transit and vegetation, shading on paths, etc. So you can see where we link in on that call to government, whole of government approach to cool our streets and paths where we walk. So the concept is driven by citizen science, and I'm really grateful to all our partners and universities who have helped us along the way, and University of Southern Queensland, Central Queensland, Sunshine Coast, Queensland University and Griffith, and many other QT as well, have really helped us with the concept of citizen science and how we can develop it. But you'll see on the screens there that this is a project that is embedded in our website. It links through to Survey 123, and we can do some really great data collection that we can later use in reports in our advocacy. So the exciting part is that we start to do some heat mapping around where our clusters are of problems. and where the good parts are, and we can use these in case studies along the way. So Bake Before Boarding asks community members to nominate their best and their worst path, stop or station, whether it's for a bus, tram, train or ferry across Queensland. We also ask them to snap a photo, to tag a place and tell us why it's a best or worst example. And I think that groundswell will really make a difference, that often people don't think about what the problem is until it's pointed out to them. So what we're trying to do is create a tool that generates change. And you'll see one of our nominees on the right-hand side. That's a bus shelter that's right in the CBD. It's outside a hotel right near the river. It's near one of our biggest destinations for tourism, and yet it doesn't have a shelter. And this is where we can be designing in some beautiful structures. We may not be able to get the tree canopy for 2032, but we surely can get some beautiful shelter that's designed for all weather, all parts of the day, and suitable at nighttime as well. The data we gather from community members will be used to create an interactive dashboard and a cluster map as shown on the screen. So to visualise the best and worst examples of paths, stops and stations to cross right across Queensland. From here, we want to be able to provide community members with advocacy tools and approach their local MPs on the ground and provide on the ground action and investment. Just a small task. So here we are. I'd really love to talk about how can you help our work, keeping in mind Queensland Walks being a tiny not-for-profit, and we're trying to develop these volunteer skills, the wraparound skills that we can go out to the community and they can continue this work on the ground. How could you collaborate within the community of practice on rolling out this campaign, and whether it be through research, experience, or filling out a survey, please do. I'd love to start if you would like to put your microphone on and just talk to me about the worst and best places. We'd love to hear some of those locations and your thoughts about where you're catching public transport. Thanks so much. I'll just some of the things to think about is, how do you think we could get communities to join us and encourage citizen science, and how we can develop this tool further so that's useful for you and the community of practice. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much. That was great. That was really, really thorough and comprehensive and fascinating. Thanks, Anna. There was an awful lot in that. I'm sure I speak for a lot of people there. And look, there's a hand has shot straight up. If you're happy to take a question, Alexandra, was it put your hand up? It's gone from my screen, but if you're there, you're welcome to come on.
I was trying to say, well done, Anna. Thank you very much for raising all of those topics. It's very great to see how everything so clearly interacts. So thank you very much.
Hello, Alex, and thank you so much. And remiss of me not to acknowledge Queensland Health and Arup and all the work that you did through the walking strategy for the Canopy Cast Pro, which is an excellent tool, and we know it's being used, and we can't wait to see it rolling out more. So really appreciate you you being part of it.
Thanks, Anna.
We have a couple of comments, not so much questions, Anna, but comments. I'm sure the questions are forthcoming, but just going back to the start, Lanny Roberts said, remembering an uncomfortable wait one morning on the train platform at Altandi, looking around, and the infrastructure seemed to demand a tree-free clearance zone. I haven't heard of this. Have you heard of this?
Yes. Queensland Rail are notoriously sensitive about what's near their rail, and many of us will know Fish Lane, which was beautifully designed by a developer, and it's one of the exemplar designs where we've been able to actually incorporate design and placemaking under the Queensland Rail, and this is a first for Queensland. So yes, we have a real challenge ahead of us, and we need to bring Queensland Rail along because there are so many places where we could be designing shade in. And we're seeing this with Cross River Rail, where there is much better shade over the platform. Probably not quite enough for what Queensland Walks is asking for, and also in front where the people are waiting at those pickup zones. There's a lack of shading there. So we can always do better, but we are starting to improve. But Queensland Rail, if anyone has some great ideas to do some co-advocacy, we'd love to hear from it.
Yeah, thank you. Just if anyone would like to chime in on that, I'll just leave a window open here for a minute or so. Well, not quite a minute, but a few seconds. If anyone has anything direct on that. Nope, no problem. We can come back to it anyway. I'm just going to pick through the comments, Anna, if you don't mind. And there's a few new ones coming in, but Fraser Ramsey said it'd be incredible to get greater data coverage of microclimate heat metrics that monitor heat humidity fluxes and identify areas of elevated heat profiles that is then correlated with walking or high pedestrian movement patterns for targeted prioritization of passive cooling measures. I think Ipswich has these monitoring stations set up in a few targeted areas. I know they're doing lots of work in Ipswich, but are you familiar with that work?
So I'm familiar with the urban planning work that was done near the hospital, and it's fantastic. So there was a temporary structure erected, and they went through a whole process of design through the placemaking team. I haven't been there in the last 12 months, so it's probably timely for me to go and visit. But they've done some incredible work. We'd love to see more councils do this type of work. We know that when we just won't have the time to plant the trees and get that canopy, so we're going to have to be really innovative. And we're here for it because that placemaking element will be incredible. As far as the technical part, you'll have to hold our hand. And I should have said it from the outset. I'm not a scientist. I come from a planning and transport perspective. So this is where we need the community of practice to hold our hand and tell us how we can interlink the data. So happy to chat.
Great, great. Thank you. Again, I'll leave open an opportunity for anybody to come in on that if they'd like to, from the membership or from the audience. Okay, we can swing back to it. Jonathan Olson had a question for you. Anna, what data and information do you need to support your advocacy and present the case for change, particularly around bus shelters, tree-lined streets, etc.?
Hello, Jonathan. Really great question. So there's some basic work that we need to start, which is around the mapping of where our transit is, and those with shade or not shade, and then having that overlay of the community factor of how they rate it at different times of the day. So I think what we're aiming to do is get towards a dashboard where we can toggle it, a interactive dashboard, so that when we go to our meetings, we can talk to our state MPs, federal MPs, and local councillors as well, to make sure that they understand what the community is telling us. So it's learning what we need to develop will be key, but also having our partners to do that. So love to have a chat to you about the data that you can access and your skills as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. Again, an opportunity for anyone that might want to chime in. Okay, we'll move along. Next up, John Mabb asks if your citizen science project is listed on the project resource page for the Australian Citizen Science Association, and provides a link.
today I learned about this association. No, it's not, and we clearly need to be. So thank you so much. We'll aim to get it up there, and I'd love to have a look to see what what's required to nominate it. But thank you for that. We have effectively 4 projects doing citizen science work.
Awesome. Well, it looks like I had a quick look at it. It looks like a good resource. So it might be worth putting your stuff on there if you can.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, another question. I live on the Sunshine Coast and I have a few nominations for the worst bus stops. I'd love to take photos, but wonder what suggestions you may have about getting permission from people for taking their photos. I don't think it's a problem, but you can speak to it, Anna.
Thanks so much. Great question. Generally, when we're taking photos of the worst, there aren't many people there in the first place, but we can also do some setups as well. So really, we're looking at not so much the people, unless we're doing a photo shoot, we're looking at the infrastructure. So best not to take photos of people without their permission. If you can work it another way, it might be a busier platform. So I'd love to, please reach out to us because we'd love to know. And I do a little bit of work on the Sunshine Coast, so we'd be happy to advocate for you.
Excellent, thank you. Well, hopefully that'll help you on your way with taking some of those photos. I'm sure Anna would appreciate getting them.
Yes, please.
A comment next from Linda Buxton. Thanks so much, Anna. Love the advocacy and whole of government approach. I am interested in skin cancer prevention, but also encouraging active transport, use of public transport, and the impacts of heat on mental health. Citizen science and lived experience, fantastic too. Best wishes. I think that would sum up many people's views on your presentation. But yeah, I'll give you a chance to reply to Linda.
Thanks so much, Linda, and lovely to meet you. Yes, we're involved in the skin cancer prevention group led by Queensland Health, and it's a very large group, and we were lucky enough to have Cancer Council Queensland involved in our advocacy. So a shout out to Daniel Jackman, who did a lot of work through Cancer Council Queensland of developing our cooler paths and places. Skin cancer is really underplayed, and we often talk about heat and UV, and depending on who's in the room and what it relates to. But yeah, it's really important work, and the sun is having a big impact on Queenslanders. We need to change that, and structural shading and tree canopy makes a big difference. So thanks for your comments. Appreciate it.
Awesome, thanks, Anna. Fraser has come back and said he'd certainly look at integrating land surface temperature remote sensing data into your dashboard, looking at temperatures across a few select summers. For example, the hot summer of 2018-19, it would be really interesting to see how they correlate with your major transport corridors and pedestrian movement patterns. And he provides a link also, which you can follow up later. But yeah, I'll hand that to you as well.
Thank you so much. So at the moment, Fraser, lovely to meet you. We use a very rudimentary surface temperature reader, and we've been able to use that in a couple of Brisbane Times articles and ABC, just showing how hot it is on the surface. And that's, I think it's a $35 infrared gun from Bunnings. But as we develop this work, we want to be able to have more rigorous data and connect the research that our community of practice is doing. So as I said earlier, we really need hand-holding in that process and connecting the dots. So we'd love to have a look at that advice and see how we can bring in land surface temperature. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thanks, Fraser, for following up on that. Next up is Jody. Great. Hi, Jody. Nice to see you. The public transport infrastructure manual is owned by TransLink and applies to the new infrastructure within the TransLink network, last updated in 2025. And she kindly provides a link from memory, and she notes it has been a while. There are different categories of bus stops, and this determines if they get shading or not.
Yes. So absolutely agree that there's some work that needs to be done of reviewing the structures, and yes, also a part to it that local council can do some work. So whilst a lot of the bus shelters are TransLink and there's emphasis on accessibility, and rightfully so, there's a really good opportunity of doing some placemaking around new bus shelters. So we certainly need to review that infrastructure manual, but also see how we can design some unique and innovative ideas into the urban environment.
Super, and you got a thumbs up for that, so thanks for that. And Shannon Rutherford, you put your hand up in the middle of that, so did you have something on this you wanted to chime in with? Please do.
Thank you, and I'll just preface my comment that I am not a planner, and so if I'm sounding very naive, then that's exactly where I'm coming from. One question I have, and it sort of links to what Jodie said, is all shade created equally? First question, in a flippant way. And the second question is, with your picture, I forget of the guy's name, sitting behind the bus shelter. I mean, I catch the M1 at 8 Mile Plains, and there in the morning there is a very full sun exposure, and there's lots of shade behind the bus shelter, exactly like your picture. Is there any reason why we aren't designing to be thinking about the whole of the day in terms of where the sun's positioned? And having more flexibility and where our seating is? I don't know. I'm not a design person, so I'm just asking a question.
It might even be a question for some of our members online. So often we get stuck in this is the guideline to a structure, and this is the way that we're going to do it and move forward. So no considerations are made of, the alignment of the structure, whether there's seating in front or behind, and whether there's an opportunity at all times of the day rather. So in essence, no, it's not considered. We can't understand why, but we'd really like to change that. And we see the link of showing what the community is telling us, showing how hot it is on certain times of the day, will potentially create change. But we need to have the argument together in the first place, and it's not even part of the conversation at the moment. It's the shelter goes in, it's designed by TransLink, it's approved for that particular location, and potentially the volume, and sometimes even the volume of bus or transit users doesn't correlate with the type of shelters that's put in or reviewed down the track, so that we know that 50-cent fares has increased users on the public transport network, but we're not starting to consider how we increase the shade to allow for all those people. So no, it's a problem. We don't think it's being done. The Canopy Cast Pro, and you might like to chime in, Canopy Cast Pro, Alex, I think has the capacity to understand what structural shading will provide at different parts of the day. And we need that tool to be used more readily, but we don't think it's being considered, apart from customers calling up and complaining. But that process doesn't often get you the outcomes that you want.
Thank you.
You can log on to and create your own design on Canopy Cast Pro and understand the different provision of, I think, up to 5 materials for shelters, and that's awnings and built canopy. So yeah, it's a great way to test that.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks all, and to the points, I would say, yeah, as a planner, a surprising amount of this is actually technical compliance, and technical compliance is focused on things like risk minimization and network maximization, not necessarily pedestrian comfort. And that's a hard mindset to change, especially across a vast system. So yeah, there's some path dependency there for sure, and it's great people like Anna are persistently trying to push through that. Because it has been known to embed indefinitely in some cases. Okay, we'll move along. Michael Carroll, thanks for a great presentation. Apologies for leaving early. Well, thanks, Michael, for joining us for the time you had. And Melanie Davern says, lovely and informative presentation, Anna, well done, and love your work. Tia has jumped in and provided a link to your campaign where people can upload pictures of bus stops that are performing poorly and other public transport stops. Linda Buxton has come back to say, actually, I should have mentioned equity. Some of our poorest communities often have the least trees and shade. Any comment on that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Linda. And there's even been some articles in Brisbane lately just about the change of routes that has meant that the bus routes, that it's they have even fewer services, and where they need to connect now it doesn't have any shading. So absolutely right. We're really keen to review this project and see how we can pick up that equity factor. So older people that are more impacted by heat, younger people, people with disabilities. So, and particularly in those lower socioeconomic communities. You're absolutely right. We know in Brisbane that the leafy green suburbs are our more affluent communities, and the shading is much better. So yes, you're right. We need to do more of it and focus on those problem areas.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Linda, for coming back to us with that follow-up. And Jody has also come back to us with a follow-up. Heat is an invisible hazard, but it can be made visible. Those infrared guns are a great idea. Also, could work with TransLink and fit temperature loggers on buses so that they can monitor temperatures along the route and at stops. Actually, that's a really great idea. Hand it over to you, Anna.
Yeah, I'd love that. Part of the Baked Before Boarding campaign is to ask citizen science if they're interested in becoming a campaigner, and that we might be able to start developing a library of infrared guns so that they can start monitoring the heat on the paths. And wouldn't that be incredible of having temperature loggers on buses and or on the shelter itself? We're all for it. How about we add it to our call to action? Monitoring temps would make a massive difference and would realise what people are actually suffering through. We often, in the transport space, we often hear about times waiting at the lights, but that's within a car, usually with air conditioning sitting down. We don't often have that argument around time sitting or standing waiting for the bus or the train. So it could make a big difference. Love it.
Yeah, and a lot of that equipment has got a lot easier to use and less expensive, like significantly less expensive over the last few years, in a way that really does make it sort of almost every day if you want it to be. The real problem actually is collecting and logging the data in some secure way, because everything needs to be networked together and somebody has to take responsibility for all that. But you can collect incredibly nuanced data. Okay, anyway, enough from me. Gail from Shady Lanes Project says, how do you address wider community pushback? The residents who refuse and remove street trees, the drivers who demand more road upgrades, people who don't use and value public transport.
Great question, Gail, and hello. And just acknowledging Gail's work with Shady Lanes and as a Queensland Walking Alliance participant. And you've asked the hard question, of course, Gail. So, dealing with residents that aren't, and they haven't been a gardener, they don't understand trees. That's the great challenge. And I know that you're at the coalface with Shady Lanes Project. I think what we're aiming to do is bring the community that's already understanding where heat is affecting them and getting them to vocalize their concerns, and so that we can visualize and represent them at the decision makers, at the roundtables that we're going to. We will always have people that are anti-trees or say, just take an umbrella, what's wrong with you, wear a hat. But what we're trying to do is work with those community members that want change and to make them more visible and noisier so that they will be represented by their state MP, councillor, etc. So yes, acknowledging that it is a problem, there is that community pushback. We need to work around it and work on the positive part. And, your program makes a big difference, as well as other programs in the network as well. Thanks for the question.
Thanks, Gail, for the question. Thanks, Anna, for the answer. moving on, Lucy Gunn has said, fantastic presentation, and wonderful to see the extent of the work happening in this space, which again, I think we'd all agree with. That's it for comments. Would anyone like to ask a question on the mic? You don't have to come on camera if you're shy, but if anyone's got a question that they'd like to come on the mic for, you're welcome to do that. Although we are getting more comments, so we'll make it a short window of opportunity here.
We might have an early mark.
We might. Okay. Jane says, competing for infrastructure space is often a challenge. Pipes, power lines, paths often win out over trees.
Absolutely agree, Jane. Thanks so much and lovely to meet you. So when there was the state, my equivalent state executive officer with AILA, Australian Institute of Landscape Architects, they were able to do some really good work in their advocacy, speaking to Transport and Main Roads about this challenge. Often the road is designed without the consideration of designing the trees in, and this whole concept around frangibility of trees, so that if someone in their car runs into it, that they, won't, the injury or will be reduced. So we've got a lot of competing challenges, and we need to shift it a little bit, that conversation, and make sure that Transport and Main Roads and other councils are designing it accordingly, so we're reducing risk to humans with heat impact and skin cancer impact as well. So we just need to keep on banging on the table and making sure that there's change. But you're right. Pipes, power lines, paths always win out over trees, I'm really sad to say.
As we so often see in small lot housing particularly. Shannon Rutherford has her hand up again. Shannon, you got a question for us?
Another quick question, sort of going to the heart of your question about the call to action about how we can better activate your campaign. I'm assuming there's not a lot of interest from councils or transport departments to work with you to collect the data to help improve spaces. And I guess following that line of inquiry, how would they feel if we printed out an A4 flyer that was sitting on a bus shelter and inviting people to, QR code scan the photo opportunity, etc.?
Yeah, we'd love it. I mean, there's hopefully most of us catch public transport and can hand out a few flyers. So the more data that we collect, the more we can start using that data and doing some advocacy and redesigning it. And we create our little army of advocates. You can always print off. We'll soon be doing a print version of the cool paths and places, and there will be revisions of those documents as we go along. So encourage you to print it out. As far as local government is concerned, there is actually interest. It's just finding the officers, the leaders that are interested in us doing this work. We just need to find them, and we know that there are quite a few councils that have been doing the research, or they have staff focusing on canopy coverage, verge planting and structural shading. So it's just finding those and connecting the dots. The greatest challenge for Queensland Walks is managing expectations and our resources. So at the moment, we're bouncing around a little bit, trying to find the next funding. And of course, when you get that particular funding, you focus on that work. So we want to make sure that we carve out a focus through funding to be able to do this work. So that's our greatest challenge, and connecting that funded research and that funded development of this campaign. But we can still do little grassroots collection, and talking to people at the bus stop is a really great way of doing that.
Thanks.
Thanks, Shannon. We have a couple more comments for you, Anna, comments/questions. Mark Perkins, great to see advocacy for a state government landscape architect. Let's extend this to local government and increase the number of landscape architects. as a balance to the over-reliance on engineers who often have very specific remits. Just before you go ahead, I would completely agree with that, but let's make sure that those landscape architects have training in horticulture and species selection and not just decorative landscaping, because if you plant the wrong thing, you might as well plant nothing at all. And that actually puts the case for shade backwards sometimes. Anyway, my 2 cents. Anna, over to you.
A really great comment, isn't it? And, you know, we've got so many legacy trees in the network that possibly aren't doing the work that we're doing. And we had a photo earlier in the slide, which I think we removed just because it was palm trees talking about shade, and really we need to get the right the trees in. So yes, advocacy for a state government landscape architect, it's really important, and we see it in other states. We'd like to see it in Queensland, particularly with our climate. So love to see this group advocate for that. If we're across multi-disciplines, multi-research, and we're all talking about the same thing, that makes a massive difference. So singing from the same song sheet will create change.
Great, thank you. And Vicky from BCC's Urban Forest team has a comment here for us. Would love to receive your research on the worst bus stops so that we can continue, that is BCC can continue with our Shade Trees at Bus Stops program and rectify the greatest needs. Cheers.
That's music to my ears, Vicky. Lovely to see you or hear from you online. And we would love to share it with BCC. We know that it's been through a really tricky time with budget cuts. And so that has an impact on your work and an outcome to the users. And I was pretty excited, and I think it came through your team, that I got 2 trees in near the Stafford Heights bus stop. But the real case was that it took best part of 4 years in advocacy to get those 2 trees. So we've got a lot of work to do of smoothing that process and making that process faster. And but we can't wait to chat to you, Vicky. That'll be fabulous. And also bring in all those recommendations from the ABC conversation as well. Thanks so much for your comment.
Great. Well, there are no more comments at present. Are there any last or lingering questions from the audience? We've had quite a long discussion, which has been great. Well, perhaps, Anna, you want to take one more opportunity just to say to the audience, or remind the audience, how they can best help you, help Queensland Walks, help your campaigns, how the Queensland Heat Health Community of Practice can be helpful to you and our membership.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, and really appreciate having the opportunity to speak to everyone. Please feel free to get in contact with Queensland Walks if you have some great idea of how we can extend this work, ways that we can improve. So I know that Tia, and thank you, Tia, has popped in a link to our Baked Before Boarding campaign. As you'll see, it's really rudimentary, and so there are ways that we can develop that. It's version 1. So jump on, have a play around with it, put some comments in it, try and add a photo of the transit stop. So that's the first one. Have a look at our work. Second one is jump onto our website and have a look at the Queensland Walking Alliance work, the call to action, use it and share it with your colleagues. We went through a consultation process. Some of you in this room were involved in that, and thank you so much for your time. So jump on our website and use that. And the third part is thinking about how we could be working with you with research and bringing in that community-led, co-designed research to develop that user experience and that human-centered design. So if you have some projects in mind, please come to us. We'd love to have a chat to you. And we also are looking for some GIS specialists that know how to work around ArcGIS, Esri, and can help us develop those dashboards and the design of our surveys.
Well, thank you for being so clear. We hope we can help in in a variety of ways. Also, to just mention, the recording of this presentation and discussion will be put up as usual. So other members who couldn't be here in person will have the opportunity to watch it back. So hopefully they'll perhaps have cause to reach out and connect with you as well following it. So thanks for that, Anna. Any last questions from anybody, or will we finish up a few minutes early, giving everybody time for a quick break before their next 1:30 or whatever is coming up in the calendars? I don't see any last comments or hands going up. No. Okay. Well then, let me just take one final opportunity to thank Anna and Queensland Walks so much for their work in general, and also for today's presentation and information sharing. Thanks to you all for coming along and for a vigorous discussion. And Anna was very clear on the ways to contact her and link with her organization and the work they're doing. So I would encourage you to do that. And we at the QCOP are delighted we got this event to happen. It's been in process for a while. And so it's a real pleasure to get this one done and out there and recorded for future reference as well. So thanks from me and everybody at QCOP. Thanks also to Shannon for co-leading, and Anjali for her technical skills and helping out with the presentation and the setup of so many things. Anna for presenting, and everybody else for coming along. So thanks one and all.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Anjali, I think we can probably stop recording.